This is Jay Watts from Merely Human Ministries. I wanted to share what happened earlier this year in a Q&A. This fall, I was at a university speaking, and a young man during Q&A raised his hand to ask a question. The question he asked was, how do you know that something is wrong? How do you know that it's objectively wrong to hurt another human being? He said, how do you know that there is a difference? And like I'd made a point that there's a difference in value between things like cockroaches and dogs and cats and human beings. How do you know that it's a greater wrong to kill them? How do you know that there's anything wrong at all? How do we know this? And I told him, I was like, well, I don't know what your test of knowledge is. I don't know what your standard of knowledge is. But let's go through this and let's see if I can come up with a response. First, there were two different things that you asked, and let's address the first one. How do we know anything is wrong? Well, we have intuition is the first place. The way that the world appears to us at our first experience of it. So let's start with the first part. How do we know anything is wrong? Let's address that first. And let's begin there with discussing our intuitions, the way that the world appears to us. There seems to be a shared knowledge or a shared understanding. There are things that are wrong that we can do to other human beings. This was actually a critical evaluation for me that I went through when I moved from being an atheist into a Christian. When I was younger, it seemed obvious to me that I held a worldview that didn't have room for the idea that there was things that wrong, objectively wrong, that we could do to other human beings, but that there were. We're filming this actually at a park, and just over there where I can actually see is a playground. Now, it seems obvious to me that everybody would say it is better to love children, to cherish them, to hug them, to affirm them, to make them feel good about the world they live in and loved within it, than it would be to harm them, to murder them, to kill them. Harming children is wrong. Loving them is right. These are intuitions that we have. And there's a good reason to trust that intuition when we all share that. And if we're going to break from that, then we need to have really good reasons to do so. And so now these intuitions actually stretch to what you were asking me about. And the second part, how do I know the difference between killing a cockroach or an ant or a bug and killing a dog and killing another human being? This came from Greg Kokel's example, where he said, imagine you're a sink and washing dishes and a child walks in the room behind you and they ask you this question, Daddy, can I kill this? And it depends on what they're holding as to how we answer. The first question we have to answer is, what is it? What do you have? If it's a bug or an insect, the answer may be yes, maybe no. If it's a neighbor's cat or dog, an absolute no. And if it's a brother or sister, you've got something really bad going on in your house. What it is will determine how we answer the question. Can I kill this? What is it? And so I said, imagine that you drove here today, or however you got to this building today, or however everybody got around. Well, every time you get in your car, something dies. You're going to ride over some ant. Some bug is going to hit your windshield or your grill. You're going to kill something on your way here. And more likely than not, no matter what you say in this philosophical conversation that we're having, discussing deep abstractions, it really doesn't bother you that much. As a matter of fact, it bothers you so little, you'll get back in your car and drive everywhere that you need to go, or take public conveyance or anywhere that you're going to go, with the knowledge that things are going to die in order for you to get from point A to point B. Now, that doesn't mean that we should be out there intentionally killing bugs, although it means that there's a difference in intentionally killing a bug than it would be killing other forms of life. Now, I would dare say if on the way here you ran over a dog in a horrible accident, as has happened to many of my friends during their lifetime, that they hit or killed family pets by accident while driving through neighborhoods, that bothered them forever. As a matter of fact, you can talk to some of them and say, tell me about it, and they don't want to talk about it. When they share it, it clearly still has a hold on them emotionally. It was something that happened many years ago, in some cases decades ago, but it still upsets them to talk about it. Now, I know one person that I have had a conversation with that killed another human being in an auto accident. Not intentionally, it was an accident. They couldn't drive for years after it. And I remember watching them when they would start driving, and it was somebody I didn't know very well, but did know them, and they would sit in their car and work themselves back up. In Georgia, I know, when a human being dies in an auto accident on the interstate, they shut it down. They shut the interstate down to find out why. What happened? That's how important it is. That's the difference. The interstate is lined, unfortunately in Georgia, as we have a lot of wildlife, lined with other dead animals. You see them very often, but a human being dies and we stop everything. And not only that, but most of us are reasonable individuals, and if we're stuck in traffic and we find out that somebody died and that's why we're in traffic, the response isn't irritation, it's understanding. Well, that's understandable. because a human being died. We have to get to the bottom of this. Our whole life speaks to the idea that human life has value different than the other animals around us. As a matter of fact, I told this young man, I said, when we walk into Home Depot and you go into the garden section, you see a whole wall committed to killing certain kinds of life. Whether it's killing garden pests or insects or things that eat your plants or whatever. And I've never seen anybody at Home Depot standing in front of that wall having some deep moral crisis. Everybody seems okay with this, or at least most people seem okay with this. Now, what if the next section over was to kill your neighbor's cats and dogs section at Home Depot? Well, I bet if that was there, people would start freaking out. People would ask questions. What the heck is going on at Home Depot? That's really weird that they're now trying to equip you to kill neighborhood pets. And then if the next section over was to actually kill your neighbor's section, then we would all know that something deeply morally wrong was happening at Home Depot. We understand that our intuitions tell us there's a difference, and we act like this in all the decisions and all the things that we do in our daily life. So the next thing I asked him was, but let's say for a second that you're right. Let's say, or at least that the question that you're asking me is right, that there's no such thing as objective right and wrong. There's no objective moral values that govern our lives. There are just matters of preference and personal reflections and personal beliefs. This doesn't help the other side in arguing against our advocating for the value of human life. First of all, if I'm having a conversation with someone that doesn't believe there's any such thing as objective right and wrong, I tell them there's no point in you and I discussing abortion any longer. You don't think it's objectively wrong to kill anybody. So it's not like you and I agree that it's wrong to kill human beings and we have to discuss what's the difference between the unborn life and our lives, that you think it's okay to kill them and not us. You don't think it's objectively wrong to kill anyone. There's nothing that we could do to each other that's objectively wrong. So there's no reason to have this discussion any longer. But even if we do go forward with this discussion, you need to understand that that position doesn't help you at all. Why? Because if it's not objectively wrong to do anything, there's nothing wrong with me advocating for the life of other human beings. Not really. Now it's just a matter of personal preference. You believe that women should have the freedom to do whatever they want with their bodies, up to and including their unborn human child. I think that they should not. Neither one of us is objectively right because such things don't exist. I can't wrong a woman by taking that away from her. And all rights that we talk about come down to legal rights. The same thing as your right to drive a car. The government gives you or sanctions you that right, but when it's gone, it doesn't make any sense to say, I ought to have that back. All those rights that you have are only the rights you've been given by the government. And if the government then took the right of a woman to have an abortion, it wouldn't make sense for anybody to say she has been wrong, not objectively speaking, because in the worldview that you're offering, such things don't exist at all. There's no such thing as objective right and wrong. All political arguments are settled by pure political power. Ultimately, it's who can rally enough people to their side to get their will through, their political will through. And if I win, I haven't wronged anybody if objective right and wrongs don't exist. But if you want to argue that women ought to have access to abortion, if you want to go to countries where it's denied them and say they are being treated unjustly, then you have to appeal to the idea that women have rights pre-constitutionally outside of the government, that there are such things as objective moral values. And it's your argument that they're being wronged. But that gets us back to asking the question, so what are the unborn that they are allowed to be wronged through the process of abortion? What are they that we allow them to be destroyed? Because now we're back into a world where there is such a thing as objective moral values, objective rights, objective wrongs, objective injustices. And now we have to look at the human family and decide who fits, who is one of us. We all accept that everybody that we see as we walk around, hopefully, is one of us. And that we have basic duties and obligations to them, not the least of which is just to not kill them, to refrain from hurting other human beings without absolute necessity. And so the argument that we're making then is that the unborn belong in that family of one of us. If you want to argue that there's no such thing as objective moral values, then there's nothing wrong with anybody advocating for the life of the unborn. Whoever wins, wins. Nobody can be wrong, not really, because that way doesn't exist. But I believe your intuition and my intuition and all of our intuition tells us that's not the way the world is. We believe that there are wrong things that we can do to other human beings because there are wrong things that we can do to other human beings. And paramount among those wrong things is the unjust taking of their lives. So rather than try to avoid the idea that there are things that we can do to one another that are wrong, we need to focus on the most important question. What are the unborn? Are they one of us? Should we be allowed to do to them what we're doing? Is it injustice to keep allowing it. And that's the argument that we make. They are one of us, and we ought to treat them better. This is Jay Watts with Merely Human Ministries.